Anime is no stranger to suffering. From tragic backstories to gut-wrenching losses, some characters go through hell and back, only to be hit with even more pain. Today, we're counting down the top 10 anime characters that suffered the most. Get ready, because this list is not for the faint of heart. Starting off our list is none other than Guts from Berserk. Born from the corpse of his dead mother and raised in a brutal mercenary life, Guts has endured betrayal, torture, and the loss of almost everyone he's ever cared about. From the tragic fate of the Band of the Hawk to the torment he faces under Griffith's betrayal, Guts is a man who carries his pain like a second sword, constantly battling both demons and his own inner torment. Moving on, we have Thorfinn, whose life is defined by vengeance. After witnessing his father's murder as a child, he dedicates his entire life to avenging him. But revenge is a cruel path, one that leads him from being a proud warrior to a broken shell of a man. Years of killing, suffering, and ultimately realizing his life's purpose was built on hatred only deepen his pain. When his chance at revenge is finally taken from him, he's left directionless, lost in the weight of his past. Up next is Hamura, whose suffering is a never-ending time loop. No matter how many times she tries to save Madoka, she's forced to watch her best friend suffer and die over and over again. Each reset chips away at her innocence, turning her from a shy, hopeful girl into a hardened, emotionless warrior willing to sacrifice anything to break the cycle. But no matter how much she struggles, fate seems determined to make her suffer, leaving her in a world where victory and despair are inseparable. Coming in next is Ash Lynx, whose story is one of crime, trauma, and tragedy. From childhood abuse to gang violence, his life is an endless battle. He's a genius, a fighter, and a survivor, but no matter how strong he is, he can't outrun his past. Even as he reaches for freedom, he's constantly pulled back into a world of violence and pain. In the end, despite all he's fought for, peace remains just out of his grasp. Moving forward, we have Itachi Uchiha, the man who killed his entire clan. But the real tragedy? He did it all to protect the very village that would hate and hunt him. Living as a villain in the eyes of everyone, Itachi carried the burden of his secret alone, suffering in silence as his own brother sought revenge against him. Even in death, he remained a tragic figure, a man who sacrificed everything for a peace that no one would ever thank him for. Now, let's talk about Kaneo, whose childhood was nothing short of horrifying. Born into an abusive household and sold into slavery, she was stripped of her emotions just to survive. Her traumatic upbringing left her unable to make her own choices, forcing her to rely on a coin to decide even the simplest things. Even after finding a new family with the Kocho sisters, the scars of her past never truly fade. Yet, despite everything, she finds the strength to forge her own path, a quiet but powerful testament to her resilience. Next up is Erwin Smith, a fearless leader whose journey was paved with sacrifice. Haunted by his father's death and burdened by the lives of his soldiers, Erwin dedicated his entire existence to uncovering the truth about the world. Yet, the closer he got, the heavier his guilt became. In the end, he made the ultimate sacrifice, charging toward death not just for humanity's future, but for the answers he would never live to see. Breaking into our top 3 is Lucy, who was born a monster in the eyes of society, but in reality was a victim. Subjected to brutal experiments and years of abuse, her life was filled with suffering. Every time she found even the smallest sliver of hope, it was cruelly taken away. Torn between her monstrous instincts and her longing for acceptance, Lucy's story is a tragic spiral of bloodshed and loneliness, proving that sometimes the world creates its own demons. Taking the runner-up spot is Shuko Nishimiya, whose suffering isn't about battles or war, but something even more painful. As a deaf girl struggling to fit into a cruel world, she faced relentless torment from classmates and overwhelming self-hatred. Her suffering runs so deep that she blames herself for everything, even considering ending her own life. Yet, despite it all, she continues to smile, proving that even in the darkest moments, kindness can survive. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Ken Kaneki, a character whose suffering is both physical and psychological. Once an ordinary college student, Kaneki's life takes a horrific turn when he is turned into a half-ghoul against his will. From brutal torture that shatters his sanity to the endless cycle of pain and loss he endures, Kaneki's life is defined by suffering. Whether he's struggling to control his monstrous instincts or watching everyone he loves suffer, his journey is a never-ending spiral of tragedy, making him one of the most tormented characters in anime history. These characters have endured more pain than most could ever imagine. But through their suffering, they've also shown resilience, strength, and the power to keep moving forward. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest times, hope still exists.